At the family barbecue, Mom raised her glass and said, "Your sister got married last month. When will you?" Everyone laughed. I just smiled, but inside I was burning. Before we dive into it, tell me in the comments where you're from. I love seeing the different places people tune in from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. The air smelled of grilled meat and sweet corn, the kind of summer scent that usually meant comfort. But not today. I stood in the backyard, paper plate in hand, feeling like a stranger at my own family's gathering. Mom's words still hung in the air, sharp as broken glass. My younger sister Amber tossed her shiny hair, her diamond ring flashing as she laughed. Everyone joined in, pretending it was just a harmless joke. Dad avoided my eyes, busying himself with the cooler. Mom looked proud, as if she'd made a point worth celebrating. Amber leaned closer to her husband, Ryan, whispering something that made him grin. I felt the heat rise to my face, but stayed silent. That was my role. Quiet, composed Lena, the one who never caused a scene. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know that 2 years ago, I'd been the one wearing the ring. That I'd believed in Ryan before Amber ever looked his way. The laughter around me blurred, fading into a low hum as I forced a polite smile and lifted my drink. "To family," I said softly, pretending my voice wasn't trembling. Inside, I was already somewhere else, back in that night when everything changed, when love turned into betrayal, and my family chose sides. They thought I was a failure, a woman who couldn't keep a man. But the truth? They never knew what really happened. And one day soon they would. 2 years earlier, life in Atlanta had seemed almost perfect. I was engaged to Ryan Cole, a man everyone said was hardworking and dependable. He had a warm smile, strong hands, and big dreams about building his own contracting business. I believed in him more than he believed in himself. When work slowed down and money got tight, I paid the bills and told him things would get better. I thought we were a team. Then slowly things began to change. Ryan started spending longer hours at work. He'd come home late, smelling of cologne instead of sawdust. His phone was always face down, and his laugh felt different, forced, distracted. I told myself not to worry, that he was just under pressure. But deep down, something didn't feel right. One evening, I decided to surprise him with dinner. I packed his favorite food and drove to one of his job sites, just outside the city. The lot was quiet, his truck parked in the shadows. I smiled, imagining his face when he saw me. But as I got closer, I saw movement inside the truck. 2 silhouettes. My stomach dropped. I froze. Through the window, I saw Ryan leaning in, kissing someone. The girl's hair caught the light from the street lamp, golden brown, familiar. My breath caught in my throat when she turned her head. It was Amber, my own sister. The world went silent. I didn't scream or knock on the window. I just stood there, holding that dinner bag until it slipped from my hands. The food spilled out onto the dirt, and I walked away before either of them saw me. My heart felt hollow, like something had been carved out of it. That night, I packed a suitcase and left the apartment. I didn't tell Ryan or my family where I was going. I couldn't face their excuses or lies. I just drove until the city lights disappeared behind me. In that silence, I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't beg for answers from people who had already chosen betrayal. I left Atlanta before sunrise, taking only what fit in my car. There were no long talks, no goodbye notes, just silence. I changed my number and drove until the highways blurred together. My chest ached, but I kept moving, hoping distance could quiet the noise in my head. When my mother finally reached me through an old email, her words felt like a slap. She said I should let it go, that Amber didn't mean to hurt me. Then she added that maybe Ryan just needed someone more understanding. According to her, I'd been too focused on work, too independent, too hard to love. I didn't argue. I just stopped replying. Months later, I heard through a cousin that Amber and Ryan had married. The same man who once promised me forever now stood beside my sister in a white dress and family photos. Mom beamed with pride in every picture she posted. I became the ghost they never mentioned. When relatives asked about me, Mom said I was busy with my career. In Savannah, I rented a small apartment above a cafe and started over. I found a job helping organize local events. I smiled at strangers, learned my favorite spots by the ocean, and tried to build a new rhythm. Outwardly, life seemed calm, but every quiet night brought the same questions. How could they all pretend nothing happened? How could blood mean so little? I didn't reach out again. I let their lives continue without me. The hurt didn't fade. It just settled somewhere deep, waiting. I wasn't angry all the time, but the memory never softened. Every time I saw sisters laughing on the street or couples holding hands, it reminded me what betrayal had cost me. Over time, I stopped hoping for apologies. Instead, I learned patience. I didn't want revenge, not yet. But I promised myself one day they'd see me again, not as the heartbroken woman who walked away, but as someone stronger, someone they couldn't break twice. In Savannah, surrounded by the sea breeze and strangers who didn't know my story, I began to breathe again. But I never forgot. 2 years passed before I heard from my family again. The message came from Amber, a cheerful invite to her new housewarming barbecue. Her words were polite but distant, like she was checking something off a list. For a moment, I almost deleted it. I told myself I had no reason to go, no interest in reopening old wounds. But the more I stared at the invitation, the more a quiet thought formed in my mind. Maybe this was my chance to close that chapter for good. Life in Savannah had changed me. I'd built a small business organizing weddings and events, something that gave me control and purpose. I met new people, learned to carry myself with calm confidence. On the outside, I looked fine, maybe even happy. But inside, there was still a flicker of something unresolved. I wasn't angry anymore, just unfinished. When I told my coworker about the invitation, she asked if I was sure I wanted to go. I smiled and said, yes. I think it's time. But I didn't tell her the whole truth. I wasn't going to see my sister or my mother out of longing. I wanted them to see me, really see me for the first time. The week before the trip, I planned carefully. I chose a simple but elegant dress, bought a small silver box, and wrapped it neatly with a ribbon. Inside it, I placed something that would remind them of the night everything fell apart. It wasn't meant to cause pain, just to reveal truth. The drive back to Georgia felt strangely calm. The roads looked the same, but I didn't. My hands didn't shake when I turned onto the familiar street, though my heart beat a little faster. Laughter drifted from the backyard as I parked. The smell of barbecue and cut grass filled the air, just like before. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and carried the gift under my arm. I wasn't returning as the girl they pitted. I was coming as the woman they underestimated. Whatever happened next wouldn't undo the past, but it would end the silence that had lasted far too long. The afternoon sun was bright, and laughter floated across the yard. But beneath it all, the air felt heavy. Amber moved through the crowd like she owned the place, showing guests around her new home. Every wall seemed to hold proof of her perfect life. Pictures with Ryan, vacation souvenirs, their golden retriever sleeping near the patio. She looked proud, and everyone saw her as the shining star. Mom followed close behind, bragging about Amber's wedding, her home, her husband. When the talk turned to me, her tone changed, soft smiles, quick excuses. Lena's still focusing on her work, she said, like it was something to pity. People nodded politely. I just kept my smile steady, pretending the comments didn't sting. I wasn't here to argue or defend myself. Ryan barely looked at me. Every time our eyes met, he glanced away, pretending to refill drinks or check the grill. His laughter sounded forced, and I could see the unease behind his polite grin. He looked like a man living inside a lie. Amber, though, didn't notice, or maybe she refused to. She touched his arm often, as if reminding everyone that he belonged to her now. I chatted when needed, complimented the food, asked about their dog. My voice was calm, my hand steady. No one could tell how my heart raced beneath that surface. It was strange being surrounded by people who thought everything was normal when so much had been built on secrets. As the evening light turned golden, someone called for a group photo. Everyone gathered in front of the new house, smiling for the camera. I stood beside Amber, close enough to catch the familiar scent of her perfume. Just before the shutter clicked, I said quietly, "Some pictures age better than others." Amber blinked, confused for a second, then laughed it off as a harmless joke. The others laughed too, thinking nothing of it. I smiled, not saying another word. The flash went off, capturing a moment they would one day wish they could forget. While they laughed and posed again, I glanced at the small silver box waiting on the table. My calm stayed unbroken. The real storm hadn't even started yet. When dinner was served, the mood felt almost too cheerful. Candles flickered on the long table, and everyone talked over one another, plates full and glasses clinking. I waited patiently, letting them enjoy the comfort of their own noise. My heart was steady, my face unreadable. When the moment felt right, I reached for the small silver box beside my plate. I brought something for you both, I said, my tone soft but clear. The table quieted. Amber smiled, pretending to be touched. Ryan gave a cautious nod, his fork halfway to his mouth. Oh, Lena, you didn't have to, Amber said, already reaching for it. I only smiled and slid it toward her. She pulled at the ribbon, lifting the lid slowly. For a second, no one breathed. Inside lay a polished photo frame, silver edges engraved with the words "Forever Started Here." Behind the glass was a photo, one I'd taken 2 years ago. Ryan and Amber in his truck, locked in a kiss. The same night, everything had fallen apart. Amber's hand trembled. The color drained from her face. Ryan froze, eyes wide, unable to look at me or her. The soft music playing in the background suddenly felt too loud. The chatter around the table faded into silence. Mom frowned, confused by everyone's expression. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, her voice sharp with irritation. I turned toward her, my voice calm and even. It's a memory, I said. The night they finally got what they wanted. A few gasps broke the quiet. Someone dropped a fork. The weight of truth settled like dust, impossible to ignore. Amber tried to speak, but no words came. Ryan's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I stood, smoothing my dress. Thank you for dinner, I said softly. Everything looks beautiful. Then I stepped away from the table, the stunned silence following me. No one tried to stop me. As I walked toward the front door, I could hear the low murmurs beginning behind me. Questions, whispers, confusion spreading like smoke. I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I felt light. The truth was finally where it belonged, out in the open, no longer mine to carry. The moment I stepped outside, voices erupted behind me. Through the open door, I heard Amber shouting, her voice breaking with anger and panic. How could you let that picture exist? She yelled. Ryan muttered something, his tone low and guilty. The guests sat frozen, unsure whether to stay or leave. The cheerful evening had turned into a storm within minutes. Mom's voice cut through the noise. Lena, get back here, she shouted, storming toward the door. Her face was red with frustration, not embarrassment for Amber, but fury at me for exposing the lie. You didn't have to humiliate your sister like that. You always take things too far. I turned back, meeting her eyes calmly. I didn't humiliate her, Mom. I just showed everyone what you didn't want to see. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't stop. You called me selfish when I left. You said I didn't try hard enough to keep him. But the truth is, I was paying his bills while he was meeting Amber behind my back. You called it ambition when she took him, and failure when I walked away. The room fell silent except for Amber's choked sobs. Ryan sat with his head down, avoiding everyone's gaze. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably, whispering to one another. The truth had stripped away every polite smile in that house. Mom crossed her arms, trying to hold her ground, but the certainty in her face was gone. Before she could speak, Dad finally stood up. That's enough, Donna, he said quietly. Everyone turned to him. I knew something wasn't right. I saw how Ryan looked at Amber even back then. I should have said something. His voice shook, but there was a tired honesty in it. Mom stared at him like he'd betrayed her too. Amber ran from the table, crying, and Ryan followed, his voice lost in the chaos. Plates clattered, guests murmured excuses to leave, and the perfect family picture everyone loved to show off fell apart right there. I didn't stay to watch the pieces crumble. I grabbed my purse and walked toward my car. Behind me, shouting continued, but I didn't look back. For once, the noise wasn't my burden to carry anymore. A week passed after that night, and everything around me felt strangely still. The calls from my family stopped, and the silence was almost comforting. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. It was short and careful, just a few lines. He said he was sorry for not listening, for letting things go too far. He told me he finally understood what I had been carrying alone. I read it twice, my throat tight, then typed back, "Thank you." It was all that needed to be said. Through a friend from town, I heard that Amber and Ryan weren't living together anymore. The story had spread quickly. Neighbors always talk. Some said Amber had thrown him out. Others said he left first. I didn't care which was true. For me, the story had already ended the night I walked away from that table. Mom never reached out. I wasn't surprised. She had always been proud, too worried about appearances to admit when she was wrong. I stopped waiting for her to come around. Some people don't apologize, not because they don't regret what they did, but because it would mean facing the truth they've hidden for too long. I accepted that and let it go. Each morning, I woke early, poured coffee, and looked out at the quiet street from my apartment window. Peace didn't feel like fireworks or revenge. It felt like breathing without the weight of pretending. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired of holding on to things that didn't deserve space in my life. Work began to pick up again. My small event planning company had started gaining attention, and I'd recently landed a big corporate client. I spent late nights at my desk, sketching layouts and sending proposals. For the first time, the future felt wide open. Sometimes, when my thoughts drifted back to the past, I didn't feel bitterness, just clarity. The truth had been buried for too long, but now it lived out in the open where it belonged. I hadn't won anything grand or dramatic, but I'd earned something far better. Quiet certainty that I had survived their betrayal and built a life that no one could take from me again. A few weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was short and hesitant. "Can we talk?" I knew who it was before reading the name that followed. Amber. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But something inside me said this needed to end properly, not with silence. I agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting by the window. She looked different, tired, pale, like someone who hadn't slept in days. The glow she once carried was gone. Her hands shook slightly as she stirred her coffee. When she looked up, her eyes were red but steady. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I nodded, waiting. She took a deep breath, her voice breaking. He did it again. "Ryan." This time with someone I thought was my friend. She tried to smile, but it didn't last. "You were right about him. I was too proud to see it." I didn't feel satisfaction, only a quiet understanding. I told her, "You didn't want to believe he could hurt you the way he hurt me. I understand that." She looked at me like she expected comfort, but I had none left to give. The past couldn't be fixed with a few tears. She reached for my hand, whispering, "I'm sorry. For everything." I let her hold it for a moment, then pulled away gently. "I didn't come here for revenge," I said calmly. "I just wanted to be free from all of it." Amber's eyes filled again, and she nodded, unable to speak. The silence between us said more than words could. The bond we once had was gone, replaced by a quiet truth neither of us could escape. When I stood to leave, she didn't stop me. Outside, the sky was bright and the wind cool against my face. I walked away without looking back, my steps light, my chest finally still. For the first time in years, I felt no anger, no pain, just relief. What had once felt like a wound now felt like distance. And that distance was exactly what I needed to finally be at peace. The new apartment smelled of sea air and fresh paint. The windows opened toward the coast, and each morning began with the sound of waves brushing against the shore. It was small, but it was mine. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, filling the space with simple things: books, soft blankets, a few plants that thrived in sunlight. Everything felt calm, untouched by old memories. Each day started the same way. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat near the balcony, and watched the sky turn from gray to gold. The sea breeze moved through the curtains, gentle and constant. For the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to rush anywhere or prove anything. The quiet no longer felt empty. It felt earned. I'd stopped checking my phone for messages that never came. The silence that once hurt now felt like peace. I no longer replayed old conversations or wondered what I could have done differently. The past had closed itself without my help. My only focus now was the life I was building, steady, simple, and honest. Work kept me busy but content. I planned events for people who celebrated love, not because I missed it, but because I understood it differently now. I knew love wasn't about ownership or approval. It was about freedom, the kind that doesn't silence you to keep someone else comfortable. One morning, I sat at my desk and wrote a small note on a scrap of paper. "Never beg for love that demands your silence." I pinned it above my workspace, a quiet promise to myself. The sunlight hit the corner of the note, and for a moment, I just smiled. I thought about the barbecue that started everything. The laughter, the questions, the way Mom's words had once made me shrink inside myself. Now, I could almost laugh thinking of it. "When will you get married, Lena?" I whispered under my breath. Then I smiled again, softer this time. "Maybe never, Mom. But I did find something better, my peace." The waves kept rolling outside, steady and endless. For once, I wasn't waiting for anything. I had already arrived exactly where I was meant to be. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away from them? Or should I have tried to forgive and stay? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.